Good morning. I'm J. Lenora Bressler, and welcome to the July 10, 2017 edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. We've been looking, of course, at the Psalms, but we're going to take a little bit of a change of pace today and look at something a little bit different. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with at various times in their life, but we often call it the midlife crisis. You know, I think a lot of us think that a midlife crisis, that time in your life when you're no longer a youngster, you're not old yet, but you realize that some options are closing or are about to close, and you just have to reconsider. You look at your life and you say, am I happy with where I am now? Am I satisfied with the choices that I've made and the roads that I've taken that have led me to where I am? I think a lot of us think that challenge, that struggle, that reality check, if you will, that a lot of people have is a modern thing, but it's not. You go back and you read in antiquity and all the way up through the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and into modern times, and you realize that almost every human being, at least every one that thinks substantively and really thinks about the overarching metaphysical issues of life, like why am I here? What am I supposed to do with my life, etc., has a moment, or sometimes moments, like this. It's interesting that in the Bible, it appears that we have the same thing happening. And to some of the best of folk, you might say, this kind of reconsideration of one's lifetime is a very dangerous time, because if you find that you are dissatisfied in some way, it can prompt you to do stupid, even unkind, even downright evil and sinful things. It's a very, very dangerous time. And some of our most godly people have fallen prey to the temptation to do something rash because of a dissatisfaction in a midlife crisis. I'll give you some perfect examples. When you think of David, we often think about that wonderful young man who went out and fought Goliath and who stood up for the Lord. The young would-be king, the shepherd boy on the run undeservedly from King Saul. We think about the king who brings the ark of the tabernacle into Jerusalem and is dancing before the Lord. It is a midlife, however, crisis, apparently, that David was going through when he committed his terrible sin with Bathsheba and then even went so far as to murder her husband over it. Solomon started out so very, very well, known as the beloved of God, someone who built the temple and said the great prayer to God, someone who as a young king had asked for wisdom over his people, and so enchanted God with that God gave him everything else. And then we see that as he became more mature, unfortunately, women, in his case, seem to have turned his heart away from the Lord and gave him a double heart, where he allowed all kind of pagan rituals and worship right alongside the worship of the one true God, Yahweh. Samson seems to have had problems all his life, but what really got him into trouble was, again, a midlife crisis that appeared to have occurred to him, and then we have the terrible end for him with Delilah. There are many more examples that I could give. And so I ask this question: what should one do when one feels that they might indeed be going through a midlife crisis? And the answer is, when in doubt, do nothing. When in doubt, be very, very careful of your choices. And this is where you must really do what Paul calls us to do. Take every thought captive to Christ. Every attitude, every philosophy, every decision that you're making, You must bring it under the authority of Christ, of God. You must do that because your emotions and your perspective is very skewed at this point. And therefore, do not go down the track of so many good and godly people in the Bible and out of the Bible who have made the mistake of failing at the most critical time, perhaps in their whole life, to take every thought captive to Christ. Do not rely on your own wisdom. Your own wisdom at its best is flawed, and at a time like this is particularly flawed. Be very, very careful. I'm J. Lenora Bressler. Visit me tomorrow on the next edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. Have a great day.